Well, it's me again, Robert Simmons. I'm here in my ultra low-tech New Zealand studio talking to you today about Azozeo Phenacite and light body activation. It's April 21st, 2020, and the world is still united in a strange way through the experience of the COVID-19 pandemic. So one of the reasons I'm doing more videos more often is that I feel as though one of the opportunities of this situation is to communicate more with you, and also for you to work with your stones more. And to me, it also is a very important time to do that, because this is an initiatory moment. As I've said in some of my other videos, there is a tremendous amount of coming loose of what we thought of as the stable moorings of our reality. And although that's creates a lot of anxiety in our everyday surface self, our deep self has the opportunity to emerge during a time like this. And all of my work with stones, especially in the recent years when I've been focusing on the alchemy of stones and spiritual alchemy in general, everything in the world and in the universe is, in a sense, moving towards transformation always, moving towards an enhancement of evolution, moving towards the realization of the unity of spirit and matter, the union of spirit and matter, the marriage of heaven and earth. What the Greeks called the hieros, or the sacred marriage, is, in my view, kind of the purpose of it all. And so our opportunity and the role we can play, I think, here on earth, especially during transformational times, is to make ourselves available to experiencing and inwardly witnessing the transformations that are trying to occur. So all of the things that make us anxious, all of the things that we would call bad that are going on now, are the dark side, or the difficult side, I guess I'll say, of what's happening. But there is also another side to it, and that's what I want to talk about today. So in the Alchemy of Stones, I've chosen, in my new book that's coming out in the fall, I've chosen 4 stones that I consider to be the cornerstones of the alchemy of stones, of spiritual alchemy that utilizes stones, at least as it happens in my work. And so those 4 stones that I've mentioned in another video are Moldavite, Phenacite, Azeztulite, and Rose Sophia. And today the focus is Phenacite, and in particular Azozeo Phenacite. You may have noticed my friend here. I'll be talking about this stone soon. It is the first of what I call the Azozeo Phenacites to emerge from the earth, and it's the one that got me started down this path, this aspect of my path with stones. So, what is phenacite? That might be a good place to start. Phenacite is a beryllium silicate crystal. It's in the beryl family, but it isn't the same as what we call the beryls, which are emerald, morganite, goshenite, bixbyite. I might have left one out, but those are all beryllium silicates too, but they are all the very same mineral. Emerald and morganite and transparent goshenite are all the same mineral, with different trace elements that make for the different colors. Phenacite is a slightly different mineral that's very close to emerald, and the other ones I mentioned, morganite and goshenite, in structure. So there is silica, there's oxygen, there is beryllium in these crystals, as there are in things like emerald. This phenacite crystal that I have my hand on weighs about 16 pounds, and it's huge for phenacites. Most phenacites are quite small. A piece like this is a medium-sized phenacite in terms of what is generally dug up around the world in the places where they're found. And it is the rarest of all of the stones that I call the four cornerstones. It's even rarer than Moldavite. So phenacite was the second stone of my own path of awakening with crystals. If you have read the Moldavite book, or maybe even the Book of Stones, and I think it's in Stones of the New Consciousness as well, my original awakening of my capacity to feel crystal energies occurred when I was meditating with Moldavite. And in that particular meditation, I started off by imagining myself going on an out-of-body journey. That journey took on a life of its own, took me out into the stars inwardly, and I ended up visiting what I would now call the Great Central Sun. It was a great golden star in the cosmos. And in that Moldavite experience, I found myself orbiting this golden star, and there were millions of tiny golden orbs that mirrored the image of the star that were circulating around it, orbiting around it. And each of those tiny golden orbs, or tiny versions of the sun, had a golden thread connecting them with the giant star. So I'm saying this story again because it's really about how Moldavite awakened me, but the Great Central Sun plays into this story of phenacite also. There was a point in this sort of astonished experience that I was having in which I saw all this with the central sun, and I was there among all these orbs going around, and I asked myself, what does my body look like here? I wonder. So I sort of tried to look at myself, and I saw another one of those golden orbs. That was my spiritual body in that place. And a voice then said, the light you seek without is identical to the light within. And back in the room, which I had never lost the awareness that I was sitting in meditation, but I was having a kind of a two-track experience where I was both in the room and I was also in the stars. A lot of you understand how that works. In any case, when that voice said that, back in the room, my hand had a big, intense electrical tingle in it. First time I ever felt energies from a stone, and it was this Moldavite I was holding. And the energy went up my arm, into my heart, opened my heart like a big flower, and then the light, it was light that was the flower was formed from, and then the light moved up and down in both directions, opening all 7 of the chakras. I even think it opened the soul star above my head, and it circulated up and down like a curving snake-like, kundalini-like energy of beautiful gold white light, and it was accompanied in me by ecstatic bliss. So that was a major moment in my life. And later that day, when my wife and I went to our crystal shop, which we had opened the day after we got married, I found that suddenly and for the first time, I knew what all this crystal energy stuff people talked about was about, because I could feel every stone in the store. So a big shift, a big change, a turning on of a capacity right then. And that was a kind of supercharging of my interest in stones, because suddenly I experienced what the other people that were coming into our shop were talking about. And I was very into high energy stones from that moment on. Moldavite is a very high energy stone, and many people have stories about it. And this is in the late 1980s that all this occurred. So a lot of the stones that we know these days had not really been made known to the metaphysical community at that time. And there was a book out in those late 80s years by Jane Ann Dow, and in her book there was a little entry about phenacite. She had a list of stones that she had written about in there, and in phenacite it said, "This stone is very important and should be sought out and stockpiled." And I had a friend, Hazel, who was a good customer and a friend, and used to tell me, "Robert, you really have to look out for that phenacite. You need some here in the shop." So a little bit later, some months later, after all that came up, I went to the Tucson Gem Show. And at the Tucson Gem Show, in my showroom where we were selling Moldavite and jewelry that we made with crystals, someone came in and handed me a stone and said, "Put this up on your third eye." So I did that. And little did I know what was going to happen next. I felt what I just felt right now, a pulsing energy right here going into my head. And with that pulsing was a sensation of seeing light. And after a few moments, that feeling of light started spreading from my third eye there down through my body. And with that came this high vibration and this emotional tone that was kind of an echo of another flavor of bliss. It wasn't the same thing I felt with Moldavite, but it was a very good feeling. So I took the stone off my forehead and I said to the person, what is this stuff? And he said, "It's phenacite. You should go out and find some. There's various people here at the show who have it." So quick as I could, I got out of my own showroom and went hunting and found, 20 or 30 pieces of phenacite by scouring the show and buying everything I could find, which started the whole journey of phenacite for me and in our shop. And so that's a bit of the history with phenacite itself. Now, in terms of its energies, what are they? The energies of phenacite are very high vibration. They center most readily at the third eye. They also are very strong for activating the crown chakra up here and the soul star chakra up above the head. But I find that the entry point is very, very good. It resonates very strongly there in my third eye. So it stimulates and opens that chakra. And it is because of that, because this is the third eye, that's the seat of visionary experience for us in our subtle body. It is a stone that can help initiate visionary experience of various kinds. Another thing I'd say about that is that phenacite is a stone that initiates and can facilitate interdimensional travel. So what do I mean by interdimensional travel? Well, in a way, what I did with the Moldavite going out into the stars as an out-of-body experience was a kind of interdimensional travel. But with phenacite, what I experience is that when I have the stone up here, if I'm holding the intention for interdimensional travel, I will find myself going down corridors of light. My center of awareness will see geometric pattern of light in front of me. And if I put my will towards going into that, then I'll travel through like a tunnel that is shaped like a hexagon or a triangle or a pentagon, whatever has presented itself. But usually it's a geometric form like a hallway or a corridor with hexagon after hexagon after hexagon, or any of the other shapes just repeating as light forms. And you go down into that, and it seems as though with phenacite that you travel down that very fast. And it takes, once you start, for me, it takes a kind of a choice to slow down and look to the sides along these corridors, which are like, for me, in my experiences, they appear as windows into other realities. So people who do shamanic journeying or who use ayahuasca for visionary experience, for example, will find that they can sometimes be in a whole different kind of reality. I remember Terence McKenna used to talk about DMT taking him to another world where there were gnome-like beings whose conversation appeared as visual geometries made out of light. And there are access points to realities like that along these corridors of light that you can journey along meditatively with the help of phenacite. So I hope you followed me down that corridor. I like to do that, like any meditative practice. They call it a practice for a reason. The more often you do it, or the more times you do it, the more you strengthen your own capacity to have that sort of an experience and to be fully conscious in it and to really see what that reality is like. So I've learned over the years how to sensitize myself to sort of tune in to various different stones. And now it's kind of a process of just focusing my attention and holding the intention to keep that focus on the stone. And what do I feel when I hold it here? What do I feel when I hold it in my heart, over my heart? And most generally, I'll start with the heart because, as I think the heart is the seat of wisdom. But with phenacite, there is such a resonance with the third eye that I sort of make an exception for it a lot of times and start with it right up there. And it provides just these intensely pleasurable pulsations. Even if you get no farther than that for a while, that feeds your subtle body. And that's one of the purposes, in my view, one of the chief purposes of working with stones, all of the stones, and in particular with some of the high energy stones, like the 4 cornerstones of the alchemy of stones. So, I said this video is about Azozeo Phenacite and light body activation. What do I mean by that? Well, first I think I want to talk about what I mean by the light body. We have our physical body, our soul body or subtle body, and our spirit are never separate. They're always one. However, because we have the ability to focus attention, and because there are varying levels of strength, you might say, in these various bodies, depending on where we've put our attention in our lifetime, we can become unconscious of our spirit or our subtle body, even though they're there. We can also, of course, go into a visionary state that is really, really powerful, and we can lose track and lose awareness of our physical body or in an out of body experience, we can lose our awareness of the physical body. So even though all of these are one, we can have attention that is directed primarily at one or the other, or more, or two, or there's lots of different ways that can happen, and that we can feel or experience or know these different aspects of our being. So, first thing is to know that we have what I'm calling a subtle body. And the subtle body is, it's the in-between self. It's the in-between body between the physical and pure spirit. So you might think of them like this. You might think, well, here's your physical body as a big circle, and here's your spirit over here, and your spirit incarnated in your physical form, but its natural home is in the realm of pure spirit. So where they overlap, that almond-shaped place where they overlap, if we're going to use circles as an image, is the realm of the subtle body. The soul body, I also call it. And when we feel crystal energies, like I feel stone energy in my heart, or I feel it in my third eye, or I feel it in any of my chakras. The chakras are not physical. The chakras are the organs of the subtle body, you might say. They are what composes the subtle body in its central corridor. And then from there, the subtle body is very malleable. This is, if we want to talk about being a shapeshifter for real, it's the subtle body that shifts its shape. And when we have our attention there and really school ourselves in being aware of our subtle body, then we have a lot of ability to manifest it in different ways. And the stone beings, when we meet the stone beings as beings and not as objects, we meet them in their subtle body or their energy form. So when I meditate with a stone to say, what is your energy? What relationship with people can you offer, or what do you want from people in terms of what we can offer you? What I see, I usually see images, and what I see is in that realm of the subtle body. And the stone beings, just like all beings who are aware of themselves in the subtle realm, have the ability to shape themselves and present an appearance that whatever one they want, and the stone beings present appearances that symbolize or are meaningful in regard to what their energies are. So it's a big story. I have chapters in the new Alchemy of Stone's book about the subtle body and what its activation is. So we all have one. And people who do not have any awareness, for example, of stone energies, it may be true that they're simply not aware of their subtle body, because it's the subtle body, the image that goes with the physical body but exists in the in-between realm. That's the body that interacts with the stone beings, and that's the body in which we so-called feel crystal energy. So it translates into our physical body so that it seems as though when I hold a phenacite, I'm having a vibe right here in my forehead. But no one can measure that vibration with a machine. No one can measure crystal energies with a machine, because the machines that we make in the physical world can't measure the energies of the subtle realm. And that tells me that since we are not able to measure or validate crystal energies as any kind of electromagnetic energy or anything like that, It points to the fact that they exist in that subtle realm, that soul realm, where we seem to meet them as beings. And so I'm pontificating, but my point is, most of us start off our lives as adults. Once we're become adults, if we haven't meditated much, or if we haven't worked with crystals much, it's very possible that our subtle bodies are what I would call, what the Chinese alchemists would have called weak, meaning they haven't been practiced. It's analogous to muscles, you know. If you don't use it, you lose it. So with our subtle body, you don't lose it entirely, but there are relative areas of strength and weakness. And one of the things that Chinese alchemists believe very strongly is that the purpose of their work was to exercise and develop and strengthen their subtle body by bringing in a great deal of qi, or life force. And that was believed to make them physically stronger, as well as spiritually more powerful, and able to exercise what we would call paranormal abilities and things like that. All those are centered in the subtle body. So they kept pouring qi from whatever their practices were that they used into their subtle body and their chakras and their meridians and all of that. And that built up in them spiritual, I don't know if you'd call it spiritual power. I guess you might call it that. But with us with most people who are not Chinese alchemists, who haven't done a lot of that, our subtle bodies are relatively weak, and we may not even be aware of them. So all crystals, all the stone energies that we can come into contact with, operate to nourish and strengthen and develop our subtle body in its many, many aspects. The subtle body is every bit as complex as the physical body. When I talk about chakras, I'm just talking about major organs of the subtle body. But when you think, for instance, about the meridians of acupuncture, there are, thousands of those, and there are more aspects to our subtle body even than that. But I do think that the analogy and the image that you get when you think of acupuncture with all those points on the body, those are energy points, and they do not correspond to nerves or blood vessels, or organs. They correspond to the subtle body points that are linked then to the physical, because of course, as I said before, subtle, physical, and spiritual bodies are all one. All right, so phenacite. Phenacite brings light into the subtle body, spiritual light, high vibrational energy. It brings a veritable flood of light into the subtle body at a very high vibrational frequency. So it's one of the chief stones for activating what is known in esoteric literature as the light body, or the rainbow body, for instance, in Tibetan Buddhism. It's called that in Dzogchen. The felt experience when we tune in to a phenacite crystal, and this is also another one, is that it quickly becomes one of seeing light and feeling light moving through all of your subtle body, although it can seem as though it's going all through your physical body. It's going through all your meridians, it's going through all your chakras, and it is, because the vibration is so high and because the amount of that vibration keeps building, there's a feeling of radiance that comes from that. So when the subtle body reaches the fulfillment of its potential, it is no longer just something through which the spirit and physical bodies relate with one another or interact. It becomes fully manifested in what it is possible for it to be, and it becomes what's called the body of light, because there's so much life force and what I call spiritual light that has been brought into it, that it begins to emanate light as though it itself is a sun. And this aspiration that many of the metaphysical people that we all know, including ourselves, have to activate our light body is the aspiration to fulfill the destiny or the potential that we have for our subtle bodies to become fully developed. Okay? So, phenacite is one of the major stones for bringing light into the subtle body and activating or manifesting the light body. It doesn't happen instantly, but it happens more rapidly with phenacite than any stone that I know. So, third eye activation for visionary experience, interdimensional travel, light body activation. Those are the three major qualities that phenacite offers to us when we relate with it. Okay, so now I'll go a little bit further. I became a collector of phenacite after that first experience where I was at the Tucson Gem Show and I felt that first piece and I ran out and bought some and took it back to our shop, and the sensitive people that came in as customers fell in love with it immediately, and it became, a hot item. So it also, because of that first Jane Ann Dow book that I mentioned earlier, I thought, I think I do want to collect this stuff and so-called stockpile it. I do want to have as much of this both in my shop and in my private collection as I can. So that became something that I did seek out for years and years and years, and it's now been 33 years since I first connected with phenacite. And people say, is it phenacite or phenacite? I've looked it up. It's pronounced and defined in dictionaries with the pronunciation going either way. So take your pick. I started off this video saying I was going to talk about Azozeo Phenacite and light body activation. So I will. And Azozeo Phenacite is a specific variety of phenacite that I did not know about 30 years ago. I learned about it approximately, let's say, 15 years ago, maybe a little less. And it's an interesting story to me. So the very first piece of this type of phenacite that I ever encountered was this one, the one right here in front of me. There she is. It's the one I called the grandmother phenacite. This is very much like, kind of the Hope Diamond of phenacites, in the sense that it's almost unheard of to see one this large. As I said, they almost are always smaller, far smaller, and it's naturally terminated. But probably more important to me is its energy. So here's how I met this crystal. I was again another year at the Tucson Gem Show, only about 15 years ago. And I was walking through a hotel lobby where a gem show was being held. And they had little glass cubes set up in the lobby for people to look. The various dealers, vendors could put some of their stones in those cubes and put their room number inside the cube. And then if you looked at those in the lobby and you said, oh, I like that kind, I think I'll go to that room. That's what those were for. And these were stacked up from the floor to about as high as my head, these cubes. And everything, every cube had something different in it. So I was just walking by, and something energetically grabbed me by my right ankle. And I was like, what? What is this? And I kind of looked down at my ankle. It was quite an odd sensation. So down in that direction, right about where I had been walking, was a glass cube of that big wall of glass cubes. And in it was just one thing, this crystal. And I looked at that, and I had enough familiarity to recognize potentially the form of phenacite. And I said to myself, is that a phenacite? I couldn't believe it. My whole collection, I didn't have anything any bigger than that. I couldn't believe it. But I went to the room because the energy that had grabbed me by the ankle felt familiar. So I went to the room where the vendor who had this stone was displaying his wares, and I said, what is that thing out there? And sure enough, he said, it's a phenacite. And my eyes got big and my mouth hung open, and I said, can I hold it? So he went and got it out of the cube and brought it to his showroom, and I sat and held it. And actually, I'm feeling some of that right now. Just a moment. Yeah, exactly what happened to me then happened just now. And if I'd let it go, it would have gotten stronger. The pulsations from this crystal didn't just go in through my third eye. They went through my hands, up my arms, into my whole subtle body, my whole body field. And they pulsed not only energy, not only light, which I could see inwardly, but also love and the presence of a being. And it's, to me, I'll just say what I feel. This crystal is the dwelling place of an angelic entity. It's the angel of this type of phenacite. And I now call that Azozeo Phenacite. So that's another story to get us there. But before I finish talking about meeting this stone, I have to tell you, I wanted to buy it. I wanted it for my collection. I'd never felt such a strong presence of an entity with such beautiful, loving energy before. And I asked the vendor how much he wanted for the crystal, and took a big gulp because it was the most expensive crystal I had ever had my hands on. And I knew I couldn't afford to buy that for myself. But still, I was so taken with the crystal that I asked him, because he knew me, can I take this and show it to my wife and my friends at my showroom? And he let me. And I took it there, and everybody went, sort of wild about this phenacite. Everybody was feeling their own version of what I just described. And my wife, to whom I am forever grateful, after a while, seeing the interaction going on between me and the stone, said, Robert, this stone is important for your work in the rest of your life. You need it. I'm going to buy it for you. And that's the reason I have it, because I would have never thought that it would be okay for me to spend that money on myself. But my wife gave it to me for Valentine's Day that year. Pretty good present. So I took it home. I meditated with it. I was so... it's a love relationship. It's one of those stones with whom the real core of the energy between us is love. And there's light, and there's a great deal of replenishment and activation of my subtle body. And it makes me able to sense my subtle body more vividly, and to even travel in my subtle body more readily. And so, it's a treasure. Now, I had this for a few months, and I was sitting on our deck at home thinking about Azeztulite, the third cornerstone of the Alchemy of Stones. And I was thinking to myself, Azeztulite is extremely powerful, but is there any way it could possibly be any more powerful than it is? Is there anything that could be done to bring it to a higher level of activation? And I don't know why I asked myself that question. I hadn't asked that before, but I did. And so I went ahead and I just contemplated that. And suddenly I had one of my visions. And this vision showed an Azeztulite labyrinth. Actually, I had an Azeztulite labyrinth at that point. It was in my yard in Vermont where I lived then. And we had built it, and it was very powerful to walk that. But in the vision, I saw that labyrinth with a pyramid set up in the center, and a copper pyramid. And the pyramid was to be filled with Azeztulite and Rosophia. And there was also Rosophia in the labyrinth, the fourth cornerstone of the Alchemy of Stones. And what I inwardly saw was this copper pyramid filled with Azeztulite and Rosophia in the center of the labyrinth, with this crystal of phenacite on the ground, pointing up in the very center, right under the pyramid. And another phenacite I had that was more this size, a little bit bigger than this, at the apex, creating a field, a very powerful energy field. The pyramid shape, the Azeztulite inside it, being centered in an Azeztulite labyrinth, and then right at the core of it all, the dynamic flow of energy between this, the largest phenacite that had so far been discovered in the world, to the best of my knowledge, and its cousin up there at the top. And so that was what I was shown I could create to activate Azeztulite to a higher degree. And in between the two phenacites inside the pyramid, I saw to put a glass table, and to put on the glass table whatever Azeztulites I wanted to charge to a higher level. So I follow these visions. So I built all that. I built the pyramid. I filled it up with Azeztulite and Rosophia. I got the table. I put the phenacites in place. And then we put some Azeztulite there to see what kind of activation or effect there might be. Left it overnight, and the next day went out to see how they felt, and of course, lo and behold, it worked. The Azeztulite stones that had been charged by these phenacites were in this labyrinth, and the whole scenario I described, were much more highly activated than they had been before. So the whole sort of process of inwardly asking the question was like kind of a golden thread to follow. And because I went ahead and did follow what the vision showed me, that all unfolded. And that's another long story. It seems like I can't tell you about anything without telling you about 35 things, because they're all so intimately connected. But I've gone ahead from then. We have treated all the Azeztulites that heaven and earth cells have been gone through this process of what I call superactivation with the participation of these phenacites. That process we call the Azozeo superactivation process. Now, where did that word come from? That's another story. I'll try to make it quick. When I was trying to see online back 15 years ago-ish, whether anybody else was writing about Azeztulite besides me, I was searching for the word Azeztulite through Google. And one particular day I found, or it was a night, I found not the word Azeztulite, but a word that was a little bit like Azeztulite. I think I was looking up Azez at that point, because Azez was the name that the beings behind Azeztulite presented as their name for themselves and also the name of the energy they served, which was the energy of the great central sun. So you see how this all loops back to the journey to the great central sun that started me on my own path. That was that activation of my first ability to feel crystal energies. Then we came to the Phenacites and the light infusion into the subtle body that they provide. Then when the inspiration for the activation, the super activation of Azeztulite became a part of what I was doing, I had also coincidentally at the same time been trying to search out what was being written about Azeztulite or the Azez. And I did find this word, Azozeo. And it turned out that that word came out of an ancient Gnostic spiritual text. The Gnostics were an early branch of mystic Christians in the early centuries AD. And I can't go into all of that. I would never get through this video. But Azozeo was a word of initiation that these Gnostics utilized in the ascension process. They were very interested in ascension even 2,000 years ago. And according to their texts, after Christ's ascension, he taught his disciples from the other side the process of ascension for them. And the process, as they described it, had many stages. And at a certain stage, there were beings of limitation called archons that would come and try to stop the human soul from ascending. And at that point, the Gnostic text, the books of Iou, it was called, I-E-O-U, said to the initiate, say this word, Azozeo, call upon these three beings. And there were three beings who were angelic entities of light who were summoned by the word Azozeo. And each of them, interestingly enough, had names that either sounded like Azez or contained the word Azez within their name. So these angelic ones from 2,000 years ago that were helping in the human ascension process of the Gnostics were beings of light who had Azez in their name. So that was very exciting to me. And that initiatory word, Azozeo, hit me very hard in a good way. And it made me think when I was getting ready to attempt this super activation of Azeztulite with the help of this Phenacite and the other one, that the word Azozeo should be employed also to call upon these beings and to call upon the energy of the great central sun, because that is the energy carried by Azeztulite. So you see that the Azeztulite and these Phenacites have a very close relationship, and that Azeztulite, as it is now, would not be what it is without the participation of what I call the Azozeo Phenacites. So these stones are to me carriers of the mysteries of the light body and the ascension of the soul for human beings. So they're very important crystals for those of us whose aspiration is for manifesting our body of light and fulfilling, you might say, our spiritual potential. So I didn't know what stories I was going to tell you when I started this. And I hope that these things coagulate in your mind. There's just so many threads that are woven together here. But the good news that happened later in the years that followed the discovery of this one that I call the grandmother phenakite is that more Azozeo phenakites were discovered. The gentleman who had this one that my wife bought for me, I said, "Have you got any more?" And he said, "I'll try to get some." So over the ensuing years, he kept going back to the place in Brazil where these were discovered, where this was discovered initially, and through a lot of effort. And actually, this is in an emerald mine, so there's the relationship again between phenakite and emerald. In the same mine where these emeralds are being discovered, that's where the Azozeo phenakites are found. And more of them were found, smaller, and one or two that are larger. And many of the largest phenakites ever uncovered came out of this mine that the original Azozeo phenakite came from. So me being who I am and being a phenakite fanatic, I pursued these Azozeo phenakites for every year from 15 years ago till now, and brought them into my own collection and into heaven and earth in order to be able to spread this energy through the world. And so the Azozeo phenakites that are in my catalog and on my website, I'll give you the commercial plug now, www.heavenandearthjewelry.com. That's the website address. If you want to see them, you just go right on there and put Azozeo phenakite in the search. But in any case, I found that small pieces of this stone carry the resonance of the large ones. For some people, the smaller ones are every bit as powerful as this very large one. And for most people, the small ones are very powerful, very highly stimulating to the third eye and the whole subtle body. And most importantly, they carry that presence of the being of Azozeo phenakite. So that loving angelic presence is not only in my crystal here, it's in every piece of stones that were all found in this same mine where the original Azozeo phenakite was found. So this light that this phenakite engenders in the subtle body, I believe, is what is also referred to as the light of the great central sun. It's the same light that I first encountered with Moldavite. It's the light that is directly expressed through Azeztulite, and it's the light that is perhaps most powerfully poured into us through these phenakites. How do you work with them? The thing that I like to do, of course, is meditation with them. You can use them in body layouts with other stones that are have energies that harmonize or magnify or work in synergy with Azozeo phenakite, and that's very good. You can just use this phenakite by itself, either held at the third eye, and you can begin to just tune to the energy, breathe with it, feel the pulsations, and then offer your encouragement or your soft will, as I like to call it, to ask those pulsations to amplify, and they will. And if you work with them longer, the longer you work with them, the more infusion of chi and light goes into you. So by itself, held up here at the third eye, you can travel far, you can bring light into your being, and you can relate with the being of the stone. Also, and I recommend this very much, bring it to your heart. And as you inhale, invite the energy of the stone into your heart, and even see the image of the stone you're holding inside your heart. And as you exhale, offer your friendship, offer your love, offer your willingness to be in relationship to the being of this stone. And as you feel that building in resonance between your heart and the stone, more and more light will pour through you from the center of your heart, and more vivid awareness of the presence of the being of Azozeo Phenacite becomes available. The heart is the seat of wisdom in human beings. The heart is the seat of where our spark of divinity is. So if we focus our own selves, our attention, and bring our center of self-awareness to the heart, and then relate to the stones from that place, I think it's the most potent, powerful, valid, true, and beneficial way to connect with stones and work with them. So a lot can happen just with that in a single piece of Azozeo Phenacite, whether it's a big one like this, or an even bigger one like this, or a huge one like this, or a tiny one like this. And we set little pieces like this in wire wraps so you can wear them, and that sort of makes an all-the-time infusion of that spiritual light into your subtle body. So that's another way to work with it. But I do want to encourage you to meet this energy and meet this stone, and don't hesitate to work with a very small piece, because it's a holographic universe, and in a certain way, the whole is present in each of the parts. So as much as I adore my big crystal here, and I do, you don't have to work with one that large to have the kind of experiences I'm talking about. So now I should give you a meditation to do, or that you can do, for light body activation. That was the last bit that I wanted to offer today. So let's see. I'm going to work with 3 stones. I'm going to work with 3 stones that harmonize very well with one another, and provide energy points of activation and entry at 3 of our major centers. So for this practice, I'll be using the Azozeo Phenacite up here at the 3rd eye. And I'll be using at the heart a piece of Moldavite. You see that? Try to light it up a little bit, huh? It's not really helping much. Anyway, this is one of my favorite Moldavites. So I'll bring that to my heart. I'll put the Azozeo Phenacite up here at the 3rd eye. And at the base chakra, at the root, I have a piece of Tibetan Tektite. So Tibetan Tektite is a black tektite. It's a relative of Moldavite, and it is a stimulant of the Kundalini energy. So the Kundalini energy is at the base chakra. That's where it rises from. So if you want to activate the whole column and work with stones to do it, it's good if you work with these 3, although there are many others you can choose from. By the way, my other alternate for the Tibetan Tektite in this kind of meditation would be stone called Agni Monatite. And Agni Monatite is also really powerful stone, and it brings in that energy at the root chakra. So either one, although I think Tibetan Tektite for me is probably just a little bit more my personal preference. But both of them are very powerful. Anyway, so base chakra, Tibetan Tektite or Agni Monotite, heart chakra, Moldavite, third eye chakra, Azozeo Phenacite. I'm going to go ahead and do this. I won't do it for the length of time that I would normally because I just want to show you what I'm doing, and then you can do it yourself at home. So I put that Tibetan Tektite right down at the base chakra, at the bottom of my spine. And I'm bringing the Moldavite right to my heart chakra. Let's see, I think I'll move this so you can see that. Yeah, I'm doing that there. Oh, I realize I can't leave that like that or you won't see the phenakite. Here we go. This works. Okay, I already, without even putting attention on it, feel the circuit getting activated from the base chakra up. Okay, so Azozeo Phenacite. I don't really need a big one like this. I'm going to use one of the small ones that I have here. Just a little triangular piece. And all of these came from that same mine. So, all right, I'll put this here. Deep cleansing breath. You begin by just centering yourself in the heart, stretching your awareness down to your root chakra where you've got the Tibetan Tektite placed, and up also in a line to the third eye where the Azozeo Phenacite is placed. I envision a very long, stretched out, figure 8, transparent tube with a light moving through the tube. So it's like a glass or a plastic tube or a tube made out of clear light that has a gold-white light that looks a little bit like a tiny sun that moves up and up through the tube and then back down. It's a figure 8 stretched out almost flat, and it's sideways in my energy system. So if you were looking straight at it, straight at me frontwards, you wouldn't see the figure 8 form, you'd just see a straight line. But looking at me from the side, you would see this elongated figure 8. So as I breathe in, I see the little tiny sun-like orb traveling up through the front part of the figure 8, through my abdomen, up to my heart where the figure 8 crosses, up the back of my neck and up to the base of my skull, and through that occiput toward my third eye, to my third eye, and then back down the front of my chest, into my body through the heart chakra, and then back down the figure 8 along my spine, down to the base where the Tibetan Tektite is. So the 3 stones I'm working with each have a place of significance on the figure 8. The Tibetan Tektite is at the base, the bottom, the Phenacite is at the top, and the Moldavite is where they cross. Now, I'll do a couple of breaths where on the inhale, I bring this little sun up from the base, up through my abdomen, up to my heart, up my back, through the back of my head to the third eye, and down the front as I exhale, down the front of my chest, back into my heart, and as I continue to exhale, it goes down the back of my spine, down to the base. And I'll feel and invite the presence of the beings of all 3 of these stones into me to do this. I can feel their energy now. And now I'll do just 3 of these breaths, starting at the base, with a little sun of light moving through the transparent figure 8 tube. Wow, that's a lot of energy, and I feel I've put the stones down. I feel that energy still present in that form, and it's very easy for me to now see that little tiny sun traveling through the tube and following that figure 8 path. So that's a meditation you can do to stimulate and activate your light body and activate your chakras and bring in a lot of chi and a lot of spiritual light. So that it's if you want to enhance that more, whenever you get to the point in the breathing and the visualization that you're here, at that point you can inwardly say Azozeo. And you can also do this exercise lying down if you want to. In some ways it's easier because you won't have to hold your arm up like that for very long. But, I did it for 3 breaths, and it's brought a really deep and beautiful feeling of peace into me. And also, I don't think I'm glowing on the video, but I feel like I'm glowing from the inside out. So it's quite astonishing and wonderful how these things actually do work. And the more we do them, the more vividly they work. So that's most of what I wanted to tell you, maybe all I wanted to tell you about Azozeo Phenacites. I would tell you this is more a matter of just what's available to people who want one. On our website at Heaven and Earth, we have, for the first time ever this year, we got some gems of this Azozeo Phenacite from the same mine. There were some pieces that were completely transparent, and my supplier had cut them into faceted gems. So we have some unset gems, and we have some jewelry made from these stones, as well as crystals from the size of my little fingernail up to, larger than this. I think this is another one. This is Kathy, my wife's piece that I bought her the next Valentine's Day when some more had been found. And there are some at Heaven and Earth that are as large as this that are available too. So, if this video has spoken to you in a way that makes you want to explore it for yourself, you can check that out. Let's see, do I want to tell you anything else about this today? I thought I would have a 15-minute video. This is right now an hour and almost 9 minutes. So forgive me, I hope the stories were interesting enough to keep you with me. I love the stones and my work with them, and I do feel during this time of tremendous challenge to our psyches because of what's going on in the outer world. There's a component of what's going on in the outer world that's also happening on the inner world. And of course, I've spoken about that, and I think you know that anyway. But I feel like those of us who want to do something beneficial in a difficult time like this, we might feel a little bit helpless because the problems happening are so huge, and we're also all supposed to stay home. Most of us are. But you can work inwardly. And one of the most important things, I believe, is that when you work inwardly, you plant seeds in the consciousness of all that is, of all of the earth, and of all of the people, and of all of the creatures, and all of the soul of the world. Everything is united in the interconnectedness of things. And in times of chaos, or when some things are seeming to be chaotic, planting a seed of intention, order, love, and light into the consciousness of the whole can be very, very powerful act, because when the other patterns when the old patterns are shaken, that's when a new pattern can take hold much more easily. And I invite all of you to join me in holding the intention of bringing light and love and healing and well-being and spiritual transcendence and transformation into the world. I believe our work with stones is a partnership with the stone beings and with the soul of the world. And I believe that it is not only human destiny that is playing out right now, but it's also the destiny of the world, the earth. And she needs our participation, our intention, the seeds of our intent for the good of the whole, in order to coalesce her consciousness around them and bring herself forward to fulfill her potential, just as we're attempting to fulfill our potential through all the work we do and the work we did today in activating the subtle body and inviting the body of light. So with the help of Azozeo Phenacite and the soul of the world, I feel like there's no limit to how far we can go. And I take great pleasure in attempting to communicate to all of you what's in my heart about these things. So thank you very much for joining me, and I wish you many blessings. Goodbye.